Hi guys, in this video I will give an overview of how you can start understanding solar. So previously we have a lot of videos about different kinds of concepts in solar, but I do not have a video where I give an overview of sort of like an introduction to give you an understanding of what solar can do, so that you, after watching this video, you should have an understanding of if solar is good for you or not and what you can use it for. So right now we are in Phetchabun in the main office. The guys are finished with the house in Cha-am. We have one team there, but they're coming back tomorrow. So on Monday we're gonna have a bonus meeting for all the staff. We have two other teams working in Isan right now, but they will be back probably Saturday. So this is sort of the time to make a little summary of what's been going on, what's the situation for solar in Thailand right now. And I have to say it's improving a lot. The government is getting more positive, more understanding. They see solar more as a sort of useful part of what Thai society can be, how it can positively contribute in many different ways. So I see a big change the last few years, how the climate is. So this is really good news, and it also makes it just easier and less hassle for private owners, private house owners to have solar. So let's start with the most basic solar you can have, or at least one of the more basic. Let's take as an example 5 kilowatt without batteries, with 6,000, 7,000 watts of power in the panels. So with that you can save about 3,500 baht on your bill, but it has to be in daytime use. But that's obviously depending on how much you pay per unit. So actually when you start getting interested in solar, the first thing you should do is find out what is the price that you are paying per unit, and one unit is a kilowatt hour. So you look on the PA bill, you take the sum and divide it by number of units you have used the last month, and then you find out what price you are paying per kilowatt hour. Normally that's around 5 now, and up to 5.5 for 3-phase. But if you are in a specific situation where you are in a community or something, or in an agricultural area, your rate can be as high as 7 or 8 or 9 baht per kilowatt hour. So that's really important for you to find out, because if you have a high rate, solar is going to be much more profitable for you, a much better investment. So that's number one that you should find out. But let's have the example with a normal average price of around 5 baht per kilowatt hour. So with a 5 kilowatt system, you will save about 3,500 baht per month. Your payback on the return of investment, where you go to zero, will be about 5.5 years. It can be even faster depending on what kind of equipment you choose. So if you go for a cheaper system that we also have, you can certainly shorten that payback time. But there is a balance between quality and risk of failure also. So the cheaper stuff you choose, the higher the risk of failure, obviously. So we do have some cheap options, but we do not have cheaper than that, meaning there are cheaper systems available that we could stock, but we don't, just because we think the risk of failure is way too high and warranty is bad, and also if something happens, you have to get the inverter from China and things like that. So we have a certain point where we think we can't go lower, just because we think the quality is not there and also the risk of failure is too high. So when you think of return on investment, you have to really think of the balance there between risk of failure and quality. Obviously on higher quality systems the risk of failure is much less, and the safety of your investment is much better. Because the warranties are actually held, and they have suppliers in Thailand. So that's number one. So that's sort of the first system. But one major point that's crucial is that these systems that I'm talking about now, you do not have power during power cuts with these systems. The systems shut down when the grid goes down. And that's how they have to work. Completely different from battery systems. And that's quite easy to understand why it has to be like that. Like, why can't a system without batteries give you power? You have power in the panel, so why can't you use it when you have a power cut? And the reasoning is quite simple. Number one, we cannot send electricity out. That's obviously very dangerous. Approved inverters don't do that. Number two is that, let's say you open an air condition. Let's say that it takes 3,000 watts. Your available energy is 4,000 in the panels. So then it works fine. But then a cloud comes. Your energy in the panels drop to 2,000 watts. What happens to the air condition? It's going to stop, obviously. So that's why when you're talking about having power during power cuts, you need to have a battery system. And that's what we call hybrid systems. But battery system, hybrid system, those words, concepts are used, they have the same meaning. So just so you know that, hybrid is a battery system. Battery systems can be of varying quality, varying functionality, can be very expensive, can be very cheap. We are on the more expensive side just because cheap battery systems, they are really a trap to buy. Just because that you get low quality batteries that have explosion danger with it, and also they tend to stop working, low warranties, and I don't even know. There are so many examples we have seen of failures in bad battery systems. So the customers have to throw them out after some time. Wrong installations, they hook up the batteries in the wrong way. The systems overload. Basically, the client can't use them, the systems. And we get so many phone calls about these things. So that's why on the battery systems, it's super important to go with high quality, which makes it a bigger investment, but the investment lasts. So that's sort of the summary of how to think about battery systems. And failures and bad installations, it happens so much. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a guy that went with a Thai company, and nothing about being Thai or Falang can happen. We have seen many bad installations by Falang companies too. But in this case, the customer wanted a system where he could have a sale agreement with the PA. He got the system installed. First of all, he didn't get an app for monitoring, so he could never see his system. So the installer didn't give him any way to observe, so he didn't know if the system was working or not. The only way was to look on and click on the inverter, which is not very good. So that was number one. In addition to that, what the installer had installed was not a system that could send electricity out to the PA. In other words, when he went to the PA, he couldn't get the agreement that he wanted. So there he goes, and this is typical. It's not atypical, this kind of installation and misunderstandings. This is what happens when, I don't know what to say, subpar companies work, and you sort of hope for the best, but in most situations it's not going to turn out the best, unfortunately. And that also with safety and wrong installation and wrong breakers, non-approved inverters, all these things. So be aware of that. And now that we have talked a little bit about kilowatt hours, the price of kilowatt hours, what this 5 kilowatt system can do for you, let's continue. And the next thing that you should know is the kilowatt peak. That's the rating of the panels. So let's say a panel is 500 watts, which is normal now. They're on the big side, but certainly within normal. That panel will never give you 500 watts because you have loss in different things. It's the peak that it's theoretically able to give. That's the rating. That's a 500 watts rating. But because the sun is not completely perfect all the time, and you have loss in the cables, and you have dust and clouds and inverter loss, etc., you're gonna get maybe from a 500 panel, you're gonna get 400, 350. And if you have a lot of clouds and a rainstorm, it can be under 100 watts. So when we talk about panel rating, we always use the concept kilowatt peak, KWP, okay? So that's different from inverter power that we just call kilowatt. That's inverter power. So when we talk about kilowatt system, like a 5 kilowatt system, we are talking about the inverter power. We have not said anything yet about the panel power, okay? So you can have a 5 kilowatt inverter with 7 kilowatt peak. That's actually a quite normal system. Or a 6 kilowatt peak on a 5 kilowatt system. Both is okay. So there you see, like, those are the concepts that's really important to understand. Now, obviously, we can explain to the customer, you don't really have to remember everything, but it's those things that determine the solar technology and how you can get the benefit from it. So from this, you can already sort of conclude that if your electrical use is very low, you shouldn't really invest in solar, because the system price is going to be too high compared to what you gain from it. So if you use, let's say, 2,000 baht, if your bill is 2,000 baht, my recommendation is not to get solar. And then you might say, but I can sell to the PA. Well, yes, but you have to think about all the expenses related to the application, all the restrictions. And for example, they do not allow more than 5 kilowatt. They do not allow 7 kilowatt peak, on a 5 kilowatt system. So there are so many rules and restrictions that make those sale agreements much, much less attractive than what they seem to be. It seems like a good idea, but, just think about the price they give you, 2.1 baht per kilowatt hour. And now that we have over 5 baht per kilowatt hour, it's starting to get really bad. So it's almost the same as saying to somebody, would you accept a return of investment that is much less than half of what the normal system is? That's basically what you are getting if you're relying on sales. It just doesn't work, in my opinion. So that's why I never recommend them. We have some customers that we can do it for them, but and also to work with these people to get these agreements, it really is. I don't even know where to begin. It's like different rules, different documents. The rules doesn't make sense. Like, for example, they do not allow battery systems. Why? It doesn't make any sense. It's just rules that were made like a very long time ago and was never changed. Obviously it will be changed, but who knows when. So that's why those are not very attractive, and you should not base your system on such agreements. Base yourself on your usage, and then we size your system after your usage. What else? If you have a lot of power cuts, then you should consider a battery system. If those power cuts are something you would like to get rid of, battery systems are the perfect way, but go with quality. Then you will have bad battery systems. Like I said, you're just gonna have headaches beyond headaches. There's so many traps to get into. And also, if you then have bad volts, you can actually end up in a situation where you can't even use your system, just because with the battery system you need the proper volt. But we check all that before we do the installation, so we can guide you through all that stuff. But many companies, what they do, they don't even check, they just install. If you have any problems after, you are left to your own devices. So that's what we try to avoid by giving proper advice and proper service up front, which is not that easy sometimes on the Thai grid, because it's rated as one of the worst grids in Southeast Asia. So it's can be quite bad sometimes, but it's improving. And it's quite easy to see if a house has a good grid we do certain tests, and then we can be pretty sure that the grid is good. So there's that. So what other concepts is it important to know? Obviously for batteries, it's LFP is the key concept. That is the best battery available now. It's safe, it doesn't use a lot of precious metals, does not use cobalt, all of these bad things. And it's very, very safe because it's called the thermal runaway temperature is so high that for it to explode on its own because of internal air is almost impossible. So it makes it extremely safe. And the name of that battery is LFP. Lithium, if you talk about lithium batteries, that's an umbrella concept. So it includes many different kinds of technologies. For example, NMC. You never want NMC in your house. So it's LFP that you want. And there are, of course, many different varieties of LFP. And that's where the BMS comes in, the battery management systems. And they are usually proprietary. So Alpha has a very good BMS, which makes the system break down very seldom, while other companies might not have a BMS that's so good. So then they will have more failures and more problems. So that's why solar is also about computer technology these days. There are computers in these batteries and inverters, and they have to be well maintained. Firmware has to be updated. It has to be a system that takes care, and a company manufacturer that takes care of what's going on. That's the only way. What else about solar panel technology? Sometimes we get the question like, oh, I have to wait because there's a revolution coming and stuff like that. In the panels, the only development that's going to happen is the efficiency going to go up and maybe thinner film panels going to come. But so that's looking far into the future. The major thing that's going to happen in the next 5 years is just gradual improvement of efficiency. So the main point then is that as a practical consequence, the only practical consequence of panels from a few years into the future, you're going to be using less roof space. That's the only practical consequence. But on battery side, we expect more change. But I talked to a top engineer at Alpha just a few weeks ago, and he said something that surprised me a lot. He said that LFP probably going to be around many years now, just because they're still developing it, and it's such a good technology in many ways that he doesn't really think that there's going to come something new to overtake LFP within many years. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I'm just saying that's his opinion. So that's it. Hope you like that summary. There are plenty of other concepts to go over, but we shouldn't take it too long, because then this guy, he will get a little bit bored maybe. I don't know. Okay, let me know what you think, guys. Take it easy.